Many people have wondered why I can do the scary games without getting too scared. Why I can get through it all without being jump scared, or not afraid to open the door in the dark, creepy corner, or go into the pitch black darkness without worried about anything jumping me. I do get surprised, there's no doubt about that. But some people have chalked it up to my army training and stuff, but it's not that. No. It's much darker, much more ominous. You see, in the past, I used to be into the paranormal world. I was a ghost hunter. I did paranormal investigations. And the reason I started this was because as a child, I grew up with it. Now, we all have experiences as children and tell our stories and lay in bed, hear those creaks and cracks at night. But sometimes it's something more. Sometimes it's just undoubtable what it is. Now, I could go on all those stories, and there's lots of little stories, and they're fun to tell, but they're not very detailed. But I've seen the shadow people, I've heard the whispers, and not myself as well. See, my sisters used the Ouija board when we were teenagers. When they were teenagers, I'm the youngest. And after they did that, we started noticing some more stuff. So it's one thing I never recommend anyone ever doing, because you could open up something that you don't want to. Now, the stories I'll tell you today are the stories I've experienced when I became part of the Ghost Hunter Society, near Chicago, called the Will County Ghost Hunter Society. Now, the stuff you're going to hear, the stories I'm telling you, they're not creepypastas. They're not fictional stories. This may look like a creepypasta, may sound like a creepypasta, but everything I'm telling you, I'm not reading from a script. I'm not reading from someone's fictional story. I'm purely telling you off my memory, and what you're going to hear is the evidence that we collected. What you're going to see is the evidence that we collected. So, sit tight, turn your lights down, and prepare for ToneAlone's ghost stories. Growing up as a kid, I said I experienced multiple different things, and they frightened me as a kid, no doubt about that. Frighten any kid. But it's not the paranormal that frightens people. It's the unknown. It's not knowing what is doing it. So growing up, I always researched it. I always wanted to know more, learn more about it. That way, I didn't get as frightened by it. And it worked. I learned all kinds of stuff from it and had lots of bad nightmares from it. But, that's the collateral, I guess. So growing up back in 2007, I looked up for a ghost group I wanted to join. It was something I always wanted to try, and I was quite nervous to do it because I didn't know what kind of people I'd expect. But I found a group, again, called the Will County Ghost Hunter Society. And I went over to a meeting, not really knowing, again, what to expect from these people. But when I showed up there, they were all normal people. So families, daughters, sons, they wouldn't look any different than anyone else. So I talked to the head of the group. His name was Dan. Still good friends with him. And told him my experiences growing up. And he invited me to come to a private investigation. Now, these are investigations that are not open to the public, not open to anyone. They're people's homes, there's people's businesses. There's stuff that these people emailed the group because they're being tormented by something, or they want proof of its existence because otherwise they feel crazy. So we got contacted by a lady in a town called Sandwich, Illinois. And her and her family, everyone except the father, was seeing apparitions, even their dog. I forget what his name was. He was a husky. So we showed up there, and around 9 p.m. at night, And it was an old house, 1880s, I say it was built in. An email we got from them stated that across the street was a funeral parlor. On the other corner of the street was an used to be a hospital, it was a nursing home now. And that the building that they used to live in used to be a clinic, a doctor's clinic. We looked up in the historical records, 2 known cases of death. So, we interviewed, and going through the house and seeing what was experienced, the mother would tell us she would see the woman in a basement in a rocking chair and another woman walking across the bedroom. But there was one particular thing she kept mentioning. It was like her son would see stuff too. But we didn't see the son anywhere in the house. So, we didn't ask. When we had free reign of the house to set up our equipment, we went up to where his bedroom was. And it was strange, because on the wall of his bedroom were all these goodbye messages, eulogies basically. And then we found a eulogy book on the table. And we had discovered by his sister that he had committed suicide 2 years prior. He was 19 years old. We figured out he had hung himself in the garage. It's quite sad, I know. She had also told us that before he did it, he was writing secret messages on his wall, and that you can see with the black light. So we pulled out a black light, turned off the lights, and sweep the walls. And some of the messages were quite eerie. Come and get me, Mr. Deathman. My body may be dead, but my soul's still alive. And various others. So when we initiated our investigation, probably around 11 p.m. at night, we scoured through the rooms, doing EVP sessions, electronic voice phenomenon. And if you don't know what that is, it's where you record in a silent room, and when you replay your recordings, you'll pick up a disembodied voice. So, as we're going through the rooms, we end up going to the master bedroom. There was 3 of us in the room, myself, Dan, and Tracy. So we're all standing there, and Dan puts down his EMF detector, electromagnetic field detector. So the moment he puts his EMF on the table, we pick up this.
She's over here. She's over here.
Now, it was debated what was said. I'll leave it up to you to decide. But I can tell you, none of us heard that when we were in there. But that's not the only thing we picked up that night. We took lots of pictures. I'll tell you, we didn't catch anything on pictures. It's very difficult. But we went out to the garage. We were wondering where he had hung himself. We didn't ask. We weren't going to ask, as the mother had discovered him. And we thought that was too sensitive of a thing to ask. So we went out to the garage. And again, it was myself, Dan, and Tracy. And myself and Dan were underneath a drop-down staircase that went up to the 2nd floor, looking up into it and wondering if he had hung himself there. We're discussing if he did it there. In actuality, we had found out that he did it in the corner of the garage off a bike hook. And the strange thing about that is when you hear this next recording, the location of it was exactly where he had done it. And you're asking me, how did I find the location of it? With a stereo microphone, you can find out directions of sounds. Listen, and you decide.
I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just saying if I was going to do it, that would have been broken up the whole. Right. Plus, it's easier for somebody to find you too. Maybe he doesn't want to know.
I drove home that night. I didn't listen to this recording. This came on my personal recording. No, I listened to it in the morning, and when I heard it, it sent chills down my back. I sent it up, gave it to Dan. We presented it to the family, told them it could be sensitive for them. If they wanted to hear it or not, it was up to them. They chose to. The mother's words were, "That's my son's voice. I'm 100% sure about it." Father walked out in tears. 24 of his friends, approximately, all verified it was his voice. Due to this information, we decided to do a follow-up investigation 2 months later. We showed back up at the house, and all his friends came over after what they had heard. We invited them. They're welcome to come, free to come. We didn't catch anything on EVPs. We focused mostly on the garage. We wanted to tell the family that it's okay, that your son's here, you can talk to him, say whatever you need to say. What we did instead is we tried something called ITC, Instrumental Transcommunication. Now what this is if you've ever seen the movie White Noise, it's kind of like that, where you take a TV with snow on it, has to have snow on it, and then you take pictures of it, or recordings of it. You can go by frame or picture by picture, and you will sometimes get faces in the snow. Another way you can do this is you take a camcorder, attach it to the TV so what the camcorder sees, the TV shows, and then point the camcorder at the TV, which will create an electronic loop. It looks very weird if you have never tried it. And then you record it, and then go frame by frame througthrough the recordings. During this time, you can ask questions or whatever, and sometimes you'll get faces in it. So this is what we did. And one of our investigators took a picture of the TV, simple picture, wasn't attached to the TV or anything, of the snow. And the resulting photo that he got on his preview screen was this. Now, the bigger we made this picture, the grainier it became. It was harder to tell what it was, so we condensed it. We just made it smaller. And the smaller is when the fine details actually came out. And in the second pictures, that's just it. It's a smaller picture. The third picture you see is just with the excess static taken out and the face brightened up a little bit. No other editing was done to this photo. We presented this to the family, and when they put it up next to their family portrait photos, it looked just like Eric. It was him. And he was here with us. My next story focuses on a place called the Hiram Scott Mansion. It's in Joliet, Illinois. This place was built in the 1880s by a man who developed different types of barbed wire. He built it in 1882, and then he died in 1889. I believe he died in the house, but don't quote me on that. After that, his son took over and sold it. The man he sold it to turned it into a women's boarding school and had various types of schools there. Now this place, if you ever go visit it, in the basement is the servants' quarters. They had a servants' quarters. And then they had the kitchen in the basement, and that's where the girls used to eat. The girls used to eat down there. Now the place became a private residence, and a man called P. Seth Magowski bought the place and turned it into its original state of a Victorian home. Unfortunately, 6 months after he moved into the place, he was found dead inside the home. The place is supposed to be haunted by a woman in black who is thought to be believed the wife of the original owner. The original owner himself and some various children. There's 2 known murders in the house and the death of 3 homeowners. The place is very luxurious, very grand, and we were invited to investigate this place on several occasions. My first occasion honestly, it was a gimmick. It was to bring people in to kind of help with the museum portion of it, so to go ghost hunt with ghost hunters. But it was our chance to get in the place and investigate it, so we couldn't pass it up. So we had 3 groups of people all experienced, and we split up on different floors. And this started around 8 p.m. and went on to about 5 a.m. Around 4 a.m., became quite tired and started just sitting in the parlor room. Not much was honestly happening in the house. It was generally peaceful. So as I was dozing away in this comfortable parlor chair, a green velvet parlor chair, I get a yell from where the staircase is at. And it was Dan. Same Dan from my last story. He calls me over and he asked me, "You have to look at this." And what he did is he took a picture with an infrared filter up a staircase. There was an investigator at the top of the staircase looking back down at him. But the strange thing was the thing that appeared in the middle of the staircase. And I was looking at this still on his preview screen of his camera. Transferred it to a computer. And when we saw it, the first thing I thought of when I looked at it was a man standing there, or floating, and kind of looking back over his shoulder at the cameraman. You decide what it looks like to you. Judging where he's at and where we're standing, afterwards, I stood at that very step, trying to figure out how tall he was and where exactly he was. And from the step that he was at, he was definitely not on the ground, otherwise he would have been over 7 feet tall. Now, he was floating in the air to a degree. We're not sure who this was. You can decide. Is it one of the homeowners? One of the murderers? We had several other various things happen. There was a doll room. Very creepy China doll room. Very small, but enough with an old baby carriage in it. Enough to get a couple people in there. And caught a picture in there, and everything was orange and smeared. And it wasn't enough to say it was paranormal, but it was a very creepy photo, I'll say that. But one of the other strange photos that occurred there was a picture of what we might believe is the woman in black. This was taken in one of the bedrooms. In fact, one of the bedrooms that one of the homeowners was found dead, laying out of blood to death. Now this picture I'm going to show you looks like a side silhouette of a woman walking by. Now we just don't take one picture. We take many pictures, and for some reason this one popped up with this black shadowy figure in it. Did it again several times, and there was nothing there. I'll let you decide what it is. But who knows? Pictures are always tough. I've always preferred the EVPs. So this next one was in the basement, around this time of year. Many newspapers come to us and want to investigate with a ghost hunter group, see if they get anything. Makes a good news article. Sometimes they get something, sometimes they don't. So, on this occasion, on this Halloween month and weekend, I'm not sure if it was actually Halloween weekend or the weekend prior, they were in the basement where the kitchen was. As they're investigating, one of the investigators had an analog voice recorder with a external stage mic, what you'd see on any concert hall someone singing into. They're all sitting down there, kind of just getting the feel for it, just being quiet, just listening. And for some reason, he asked, "You can't scare anyone down here."
You see anybody down here?
To the response, someone found that incredibly funny. A little girl found that incredibly funny. Now this is at 4 a.m. I'll let you listen to it. Now this is so loud, I do recommend you turning down your speakers. It was so loud also that one of the investigators actually heard it with his own ears. But the way he heard it is not the way the recording comes out. The way he heard it, it sounded like it was off in the distance, almost like it was outside and down the street. But I'll let you listen to it.
It sounds like a child or a young girl.
Now, if you choose to want to live here, it is still up for sale, I believe. Last I checked, it was on a foreclosure for $164,000. Quite affordable. Would you want to live there? Now, if you ever travel down to Louisville, Kentucky, there's an old hospital there. Built in the 1880s for tuberculosis. This place is called Waverly Tuberculosis Center. You might have seen it on TV. It's been on many TV shows. I've had the pleasure of being able to spend the night here 2 times. I had some great experiences, some loud bangs, but nothing I can actually show you. Only my word of mouth, only my story with that. So I'm going to leave those at bay. If you guys wanted to hear more, feel free to ask. The particular story I'm going to tell you occurs down in the first floor of this place. Now, during this time of year, this first floor is actually a haunted house. All the windows are covered up all year round. There's creepy drawings on the wall, all kinds of goofy stuff. It's great. But it's even eerier when you're walking through there and there's no show going on. It's just you in this, and the echoes all around you. The second, third, and fourth, and fifth floors are all open, but that's where the creepy rooms are, and the patient's rooms, and the mentally disturbed ward, children's ward. Now, but the story I'm going to tell you on this one occurs in the first floor, in the morgue. Now, this morgue is untouched. There is no Halloween decorations in there. In 2008, Dan from the Ghost Group decided to put himself inside the morgue tray. Now, this tray is only 2 slots left of the whole what used to be there. But it's just kind of like the eeriness of going into a morgue table and going into it. So he offered to lay down and be put into it. What I'll play for you next is the events that occurred after he was pushed into it, or as he was pushed into it. Listen.
Go in more.
Don't worry about it. Something touched my fucking leg.
Now, I think that it would shake anyone up pretty good, honestly. If not having you running out of there. But we never call it quits. We'll never let stuff shake us up too much. And it's a reason why I can take the horror games and stuff. You just gotta keep going, keep trucking through it. Several other experiences I've had there, but I can't show you anything for them, is hearing a EVP that I captured when I was with just one of the investigators' children. The sun wasn't even set yet, still daytime. We were in one of the day rooms, and I was talking about how we can set a challenge for ourselves. It's kind of a fun little thing. You put something up in the top floor of the building, and then as everyone leaves and goes back to the gift shop, which is like the only rehabbed place, you have one person that's got to go walk through the underground tunnel to the first floor and then walk all the way up to the 5th floor. Now, they can't take one staircase. The one closer staircase only takes you to the 4th floor. Then you have to walk all the way across the building to the 5th floor. Grab the item and come back all the way up by themselves. It's quite entertaining, as you can watch them over infrared cameras as they get all creeped out and scared from most likely their own imagination. But as I was explaining this to this son, the voice recorder I had playing picked up an older man. A man that wasn't anywhere to be seen, and it definitely wasn't there, and we definitely didn't hear him. And he interjected with just a yeah. Very sexual, like, just yeah. But, and that was when I was talking about going to the roof. So apparently he wanted us to go to the roof. The second time I stayed at this place, it was during a severe thunderstorm. Now, we weren't getting the rain, we were just getting the lightning and the wind. There was tornado warnings. It was great. It was out of a horror movie, literally. Eventually the storm passed, but the activity didn't stop. When we were in the mentally disturbed ward, we were doing an EVP session. And in this ward, in room 502, there's a woman who hung herself in the 1920s. It was the head nurse of the ward. I asked if the head nurse was here. To my response, not in the voice recording, but with our actual ears, we hear a man say no. Very clearly. We actually thought it was someone in our group that said it. We look and we're like, did you guys say that? Did anyone say that? And the one guy we thought might have said it, he said no. But he said it sounded like it came from behind him. And the strange thing is, if he had actually said it, we would have picked it up on the voice recorders. But the weirder thing is that none of our voice recorders actually picked up the voice. But all of us heard it. Can't explain that. After that strange incident, we went down to the 4th floor. The 4th floor is supposedly the most haunted floor. It's where the richer patients used to stay, the higher class rooms. As we were down there, we were doing a test. This building is very big, and what we do, and it's shaped like a bat wing. So what we would do, we would go to a corner, and one of us would walk all the way down the hall while the others watched, and then we walk all the way back. Now what we're looking for is shadow people. They say that you'll see figures and stuff move across the rooms as you watch someone walking. I honestly never saw any of that, but what I did experience, I'll tell you right here. I walked down. I saw a flicker out of the corner of my eye. I didn't take account to it, maybe just figured it was my eyes. Walked back. And then my buddy Tom walks down. And as he's walking back, I hear a little tap, just very soft, in one of the patient rooms, the one right close to us. Again, I can't chalk this up to anything, but as we said we were going to leave and go back to the gift shop, about 3 seconds after saying that, all the way at the end of the hall, we hear a loud metal crash. And then a half a second later, we hear it right next to us. Now this jumped everyone. We all went up into, I call it the standing flamingo, where you kind of go in a fetal position when you're standing. Everyone screamed. Luckily, we held our ground and we didn't run. And then we all laughed because it was finally what we had been looking for. Finally something crazy that had happened to us that actually jump scared us. I'll tell you that this is the one and only time I've ever been truly jump scared by something paranormal. But it was a response probably you'll never see in a video game. But it was quite entertaining. In the future, I'll try to get that recording for you. Until then, you'll just have to wait.